For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come embracing life, may life return your affections. And for those who come to seek a path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step.
This morning's reading comes from the Gospel according to Mark. When evening had come, and since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate wondered if he were already dead, and summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had been dead for some time. When Pilate learned from the centurion that Jesus was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen cloth, and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. He then rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where the body was laid. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they had laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were very afraid. The Gospel according to Mark. It was a beautiful sunny day in April, much like this one. The Richard kids, like all children in Massachusetts, had the day off from school because it was Patriots' Day. Denise and Bill Richard had planned for this day for weeks. They would take their 3 children, Henry, Jane, and Martin, into downtown Boston to cheer on the runners as they approached the finish line of the Boston Marathon. The atmosphere on that block of Boylston Street was festive and electric. The Richards cheered as the elite runners came swooping past them, running faster than any one of them could dream of running even at the start of the race. With all the crowds, the kids, who ranged in age from 7-year-old Jane to 11-year-old Henry, had a hard time seeing what was going on, but they felt the excitement and shared the fun. What could be better? They had the day off from school and they were together as a family. When they heard a loud noise up the street closer to the finish line, they all turned with the crowd to see what it was. And then, a few seconds later, the bomb sitting at their feet went off. 8-year-old Martin was killed instantly. His sister Jane lost her left leg below the knee. Denise, their mom, suffered a serious injury to one eye. Shrapnel tore through Bill, the dad's legs, and he lost a good part of his hearing from the blast. Miraculously, 11-year-old Henry came out of it unscathed. In an instant, the lives of the Richard family were changed forever. But their story doesn't end there. After 12 surgeries, Jane is now running and playing basketball on her prosthetic leg. Some of Bill's hearing has returned, and he's getting around all right despite the wounds to his legs. Denise's injured eye has not returned to sight, but she's getting used to using her one good one. And Henry is coping with the questions about how he could have walked away without a scratch. Martin, of course, is still dead. There is no miracle here, nothing that will bring him back. And the family lives with that reality on a daily, even a minute-by-minute basis. But Denise and Bill haven't stayed in that place of despair. While nothing will bring Martin back, they have established a charitable foundation in his memory. It's called MR8. That's Martin Richard, his two initials, plus his age at the time he died, 8 years old. 8 was also the number he wore on his sports jerseys. MR8's mission is to invest in education, athletics, and community. And it was inspired by a picture the Richards took of Martin shortly before he died. In that picture, Martin is holding a sign that says, "No more hurting people, peace." Since its founding just this past January, MR8 has raised nearly $1 million towards its mission. And tomorrow, it will field a team of 100 runners in the Boston Marathon. Amy. Amy was an active, athletic child. Her mother says she never would sit still. She loved all kinds of sports, but her favorite was snowboarding. She loved the freedom she felt as she glided down the slopes. She loved the speed and the challenge. She loved to race, and she loved to win. When Amy was 19, she contracted a rare form of bacterial meningitis. It attacked her bloodstream, and she went into septic shock. The doctors gave her a 2% chance of survival. 2%. In order to save her life, they had to amputate both her legs. Miraculously, she recovered from the sepsis, but it had damaged both her kidneys to the extent that they no longer worked to filter her blood. And so she needed a kidney transplant. She was given a kidney transplant, and the donor was her father. Amy now has 2 prosthetic legs, and within 7 months of receiving these prostheses, she was snowboarding again, and a year after her amputations, she won her first race. Amy began to compete regularly in snowboarding races, and she's been almost unbeatable. She now is a 3-time gold medalist in the World Cups, and in 2013 she made the U.S. Paralympic team. So this winter she competed in the Paralympics in Sochi, Russia, and she won a bronze medal. Amy has also competed on the reality TV show The Amazing Race, and now you can watch her twirling across the dance floor on Dancing with the Stars. If you told me 13 years ago that I was going to lose both my legs when I was 19, she said, I would have said that there was no way I could handle that. But then I realized that my life is so much more than my legs. These stories about the Richard family and about Amy Purdy are proof that the gospel we heard today is true. The gospel story is true. Not factually true in the sense that Jesus actually died and actually was put in the tomb and actually 3 days later rose from the dead. Whether that's actually true is irrelevant, at least to me. What matters most about the story of Jesus' death and resurrection is that it points to the truth in our own lives, that the many deaths we suffer don't have to be the end of our story. The truth is that we all can be resurrected from the tragedies of our own lives. Fortunately for most of us, the tragedies we suffer aren't as grave as losing a child or losing both our legs. But we've all suffered. If we've lived, we've suffered. We've all had to bear unbearable pain at some time in our lives. We've all experienced terrible losses. These are our Good Friday times, if you will, the dark nights of our souls. Perhaps we're trapped at the bottom of the well of depression, or we're caught in an abusive relationship, Or we've lost our job and the bills are piling up and we don't know how we're going to pay them. Maybe the one we love has left us. I really don't need to go through the whole litany of pain that life throws at us, because we all have been there. We all have lived it. We know what that feels like. We know what it feels like to be like Jesus, buried in that tomb. It's dark and cold. There's no light or air. It feels like we can't breathe. We're so alone. We lose all hope of ever seeing the light of day again. Some of you here today might be in that tomb right now. And when we're in that tomb, it's not just for 3 days that we're stuck there. It might be 3 months or 3 years or even 3 decades. And so I ask you, what is the tomb that you're stuck in? Is it addiction? Is it some unbearable loss? Is it the tomb of loneliness or inadequacy or maybe guilt or shame? And then there's the stone that seals us into that tomb, the stone that keeps us stuck, the stone that's too huge to even think about moving. It's that stone that's keeping us buried and maybe even given up for dead. What is that stone in your life? What's holding you back and keeping you stuck? It might be a stone of grief over a terrible loss. Maybe you don't want to risk being hurt again. Perhaps there's a grudge you're carrying around that you can't let go of, or it won't let go of you. Is it fear? Is it fear? Is it fear of failure? Or maybe fear of looking like a fool? Perhaps the stone that seals your tomb is a lifetime of being told that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you don't deserve to be happy. That stone, whatever it is big. It's heavy. It took an army to roll that stone into place, and there's no way we're going to move it ourselves. So why even try? It's so much easier sometimes to stay there in the dark with our pain and our anger and our regret, maybe our hatred. We cry out, how could he or she or they or the world do this to me? But no one can hear us. And it's so tempting sometimes to just stay there in the dark, in that tomb. But the Easter story, all the Easter stories tell us that we can be resurrected. That resurrection is possible. That the stone can be rolled back. That we can return to the land of the living. Now, these stories don't tell us how exactly. And maybe it is a miracle. Maybe it is a miracle. But I think it's also a matter of willpower, making the decision that we are going to refuse to stay stuck. The decision of choosing life over death. How do the Richards go on after the loss of Martin and the damage to their own bodies and psyches? How did Amy get back up on the snowboard and get out on the dance floor when she has no legs of her own? A lot of it is about willpower. But one thing is clear to me, and that is that we can't do it alone. Amy needed a kidney from her father to live. The Richards were and continue to be surrounded by a community of family and friends and supporters. We can admit, it's okay to admit that the stone is too big, too heavy for us to roll it back ourselves, that we need others to help us. Those who are outside the tomb, perhaps. Those who can coax and cajole us back toward the light. But we also need others who are willing to be in the tomb with us. Those who aren't afraid to sit with us in the dark, who can help us feel along the cold, damp wall until we finally find where that stone is, and who can start digging alongside of us. Those who can keep digging when we lose the energy to, or we get too discouraged. There are people who are willing to be inside the tomb with us. And inside the tomb with us, there is God. God herself. Now, whether you take that to mean a supreme deity, or the spirit of life, or the power of love, during our tomb time, God is there with us in our pain, trapped with us, waiting for us, offering us graces, great and small, to help us to keep on helping ourselves. We are never alone. One of the problems I have with the Easter story in the Gospel is that it makes it sound like the stone can be rolled back all at once. But as all of us know, that's not how it works, at least not usually. We have to scrape and claw our way out of the tomb. And it's a slow, laborious process to chip away at that stone. We don't just miraculously appear into the light the way Jesus did. It takes a lot of time and a lot of work. There's progress and backsliding, faint glimmers of light breaking through the darkness, and then a cave-in happens. And that's another reason that we need others to walk this path with us, because it can be slow, painstaking work to get out of our tombs. And when we finally emerge from our tombs, we won't be the same as we were before. There's no doubt about that. Our tomb time transforms us. Life will be different. We will be different, having gone through the pain and loss of Good Friday and emerging into the light of Easter morning. Remember that in the Gospels we're told that Jesus' closest friends failed to recognize him after he got out of his tomb. And so after our own resurrections, we may not even be recognizable to others. No one can go through something like this and not be changed. Life will never get back to normal, whatever normal means. We may have to learn to walk on new legs. We may need to learn to breathe again with a hole in our heart where our child used to be. We may need to look at ourselves in the mirror every single day and affirm that, yes, we are actually back from the grave. To begin to trust tentatively and gingerly that our new life is lasting and real. It is sorely tempting to stay in our tombs. No matter how cold and dark they are, it is such hard work to get to the light that we may want to stay where we are. But another truth of the Easter story is that just as his disciples, and indeed the world, needed Jesus back from the dead, so does God or the universe or life itself need us to be fully alive, fully awake, fully present to the world. When we choose to stay locked in our tombs, we are denying not just ourselves, but everyone around us the gifts of our presence, our awareness, our very beingness. If we are to believe in the relatedness of all things, in the vast interdependent web of being that we proclaim, all of us are diminished when any one of us chooses to stay stuck in our tombs. God, however you may wish to define it, isn't just with us in the tomb. God is calling us back from the dead. The world is incomplete without us. And so this Easter morning, let us proclaim the good news that resurrection is here for all of us. That we are all called to rise from the tombs that bind us, to roll back the stones that hold us back, and to enter the light of the day, transformed and transforming, that the world may have its full measure of us. This day and every day, I wish you peace. Amen.
Our closing words today come from Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Patrick O'Neill. Easter is an impossible story written for everyone who has ever felt the sting of death and wishes for something more. Easter is a story for anyone who loves life so much that they pray for more life to follow. Easter is a story for people who can envision a loving divinity that will not be conquered by evil. It's a story that never dies, of immovable objects that get tossed aside, and happy endings in a tragic world, of miracles, of faith rewarded and vision restored and hope justified. That's what Easter is.